What's up everybody, and welcome back to another video here on the Simply Car Things YouTube channel. Today we're going to be diving into my personal favorite ranking of BMW M3 generations. Now, just as a quick disclaimer, I gotta throw this out there because I already know this video is going to get a ton of dislikes. And the one thing that I would like to reiterate, and I'm going to be reiterating constantly throughout the duration of this video, is the fact that this is just a subjective video. It is my personal opinion, my personal ranking, and no matter how you rank any generation of M3, it is going to be a controversial, almost politically controversial topic, just because of how many people you are going to piss off. No matter what, people are going to get upset because one specific car didn't make that specific ranking that they think it should be at. With that being said, if you guys could go ahead and smash the thumbs up button on this video, as well as subscribe to my channel down below if you are new to the channel, I would appreciate that a ton. And with all that being said, let's get right into today's video. First and foremost, the order of ranking in which I'm going to go about listing these different generations of M cars is going to be from my least favorite to my personal favorite. So we'll start with number 6 all the way up to number 1 because there are 6 generations of the M3 BMW. Now let's go ahead and kick things off with number 6 on the list, which is my least favorite generation of M3. I already know this one is going to piss off a lot of people, but here we are anyway. And that is going to come with the E30 BMW M3. Now, after doing a lot of thinking and having a brief opportunity to drive an E30 M3, I really do like the car. It's beautiful, it has aged really well, it has a very iconic retro BMW kind of German design to it, and it is special in its own right because it kicked off the start of the BMW M3 platform, high performance sports sedans. And, you know, it left an entire legacy of motorsport racing from the DTM era and just many other different racing leagues in Europe where these cars absolutely dominated. And the rivalry between, you know, this car and the Mercedes 190E is absolutely legendary. However, the street version of the E30 M3, minus its legacy factor, was a really underwhelming car for me. And I get the fact that, you know, back in the late 80s or the early 90s, if you were driving an E30 M3, it must have been an amazing experience, especially at the time, because nothing was really out on the market for, you know, sports sedans that offered a lot of fun and good power. But by modern standards, you know, this car definitely feels old. It feels aged completely. The S14 powertrain is impressive for the time, no doubt about that, but, you know, by modern standards, it's not particularly fast. Handling is okay, I guess. You know, it has small proportions. It definitely is the most analog of the M cars by far, just because of how old it is, but that doesn't necessarily make it a very good driving car, I guess. And it just felt dated. And, you know, I think a lot of the hype behind that car is, you know, matched with the fact that it has such a high legacy to it because it's the first M3, and, you know, naturally it's going to get a lot of praise, it's going to get a ton of respect from the community. But just in terms of a car that I care about or I like, it really, you know, it was very like average, I guess, to drive around. And I mean that with, you know, all due respect to the E30 platform and to the E30 gods out there that absolutely praise that car, but that's just my honest opinion. Moving into number 5 on the list is actually going to be the G8X BMW M3 and M4, so the G80 or the G82. There is not a single doubt in my mind that the performance of these G8X cars is absolutely staggering. Both straight line performance and on-track performance is stellar. These cars are incredibly fast to drive. They are actually much easier to drive than pretty much any other M3 generation to be fast in them. And they have so much technology behind them and hardware that just makes them insanely capable. And I can't even imagine what the aftermarket is going to be doing with these cars, again, both for straight line performance and on-track performance, because what these cars can do on a daily basis is a phenomenal feat of engineering. That being said, having the opportunity to drive a G80 M3 competition, I can't lie, I was left wanting a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, as I stated previously, it's a ridiculously fast car. It's a ridiculously comfortable car. It's a ridiculously practical car. But at the same time, there's so much technology in the car. There's so much kind of going on behind the scenes to mask the driving experience of the G80 that I can't really help but feel that I was just left wanting a little bit more out of the car, just in terms of the overall engagement. Now, I say that in part because BMW, with the M3 competition, you cannot spec the comp models with a manual transmission, and they also dumped the dual clutch from the former generation and replaced it with the ZF8 automatic gearbox. And unfortunately, I'm just not a huge fan of that transmission. It's fast, it's responsive, it's very smooth around town, but it totally lacks engagement. There's no feel to it. There's just... You don't get the same kick that the MDCT would give you, or the crispiness of the downshifts that you would get from that gearbox. But then at the same time, you also don't get the same level of engagement that 3 pedals would have given you as well. And on top of that too, you know, looks are subjective, but the overall design of that car is so controversial. In my opinion, it's still something that I'm definitely warming up to. It has grown on me a little bit, I will admit, but overall it is far from what I would consider to be a beautiful car on the road. Moving into number 4, we have the E46 M3, and I have a feeling this is also going to be blasphemy for a lot of people, because the E46 M3 is pretty much heralded as the best generation of BMW M3, the ultimate driving machine, a pure driver's car, a pure sports car. It's S54, inline 6 naturally aspirated engine, the last of the naturally aspirated inline 6 M3s, a timeless design, proportions that are just right in terms of the overall design. The car was never too big, it was never too small, and again, it just has a massive motorsport legacy to back it up, and I think it's a great car. I think honestly, the E46 M3 is beautiful. I think even by today's standards, the performance it has is quite stellar, but it takes a lot of work to really extract the most out of an E46. It needs a lot of aftermarket parts, it needs a lot of upgrades and modifications to really show what that chassis and what that car is truly capable of. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to review a BMW E46 M3. It was not stock. It had Bilstein coilover suspension. It was running BBS LM wheels. It also had velocity stacks, which made the inline 6 absolutely scream, and it was very engaging to drive, and I definitely enjoyed it. But there are a few things that I didn't like. For one, I was not very impressed with the overall chassis feel. It kind of felt like a boat, and I have a feeling that's because just out of the box, the suspension handling and the braking feel on those cars are just not the best. Again, it really takes a lot from the aftermarket segment to squeeze out the true capabilities of the E46. The other thing was the SMG gearbox. Don't even bother trying to buy an M3 with an SMG gearbox unless you plan on manual swapping it, because in my opinion, the SMG is god awful. There are single clutch transmissions that I like, that I do enjoy, but the SMG, in my opinion, is just, it feels so antiquated, it feels dated, it's clunky as hell, and it has tons of reliability issues as well. Aside from that, I would say that I do enjoy the E46 M3, but for me, it's just not the most special by any means. Moving into number 3 on the list is going to be the E9X BMW M3, which is comprised of the E90 sedan as well as the E92 coupe. The E9X M3s are so special in their own right, and the most obvious and notable reason is because of that 4-liter S65 naturally aspirated V8 engine that revs all the way out to 8,400 freaking RPM. That power plant alone is absolutely stellar. It is incredible. It sings. The hydraulic steering feel that you get provided from the chassis, the fact that you could spec one with either a 6-speed manual as standard, or you could get the dual clutch transmission for the first time in an M3, paired with the S65, is a wonderful match. And just the sound, the engagement, the on-track performance of those cars, and when you factor in all the aftermarket capabilities as well of the E9X generation, it is so amazing. And there's no doubt in my mind that these cars are going to continue going up in value, and I obviously see why they are already rising in value so significantly. In terms of flaws, I think what you can really fault this car for is the fact that it doesn't have a lot of torque. It's very sluggish down low. It's really an engine or a power plant that needs to be wound out to the absolute max, pretty much to redline, in order to experience full beans. And on top of that, there's a lot of reliability issues, no doubt about that, with the E9X Gen. You have the preventative rod bearing maintenance that you got to do. You got to do your throttle actuators, oil leaks left and right from the engine, cowbell clunking from the drive shaft, and then you factor in all the other, BMW normal maintenance stuff, and things can add up very quickly on that generation. The other thing is too, they're starting to feel a little bit dated, especially if you have like a double humped E9X M3 with the iDrive system. The iDrive is outdated, it's old. Single hump is the way to go. But overall, I mean, it's still a stellar platform, and you're not going to really be buying it for iDrive or technology like that. Number 2 on the list comes in with the E36 BMW M3. This generation, if you had asked me where I would have ranked the E36 just a few years ago, it probably would have been at the very lowest of the rankings. However, over time, and the older I get, the more and more I have come to appreciate and absolutely just fall in love with the E36 chassis. It wasn't until I had the opportunity to drive one and really experience what one of those cars is capable of flat out, not only on the street, but on track as well, in order for me to realize how great of a chassis the E36 is. The power plant isn't anything particularly special with the S52 inline 6, but if you look at the jump from E30 M3 to E36 M3, especially if we're comparing Eurospec models, it is night and day. The E36 is leagues superior in terms of performance above an E30 M3, and the fact that this chassis is still being pounded on racetracks today just shows how well it stood up to the test of time. The E36 M3 chassis, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest chassis to ever come out of the M division, not only because of its lightweight and nimble proportions, but also the fact that it's rigid. It has so much aftermarket capability that can just really extract the most out of it, and the fact that you see ridiculous track times being put down by guys running E36s. They're insane. You can do anything from them. You can single turbo the S50. You can single turbo them if you just want a crazy drift car. You can make them fast as hell in a straight line, or my personal liking is if you turn them into track tools. And one thing that people do to kind of get the best of both worlds is they'll swap the S54 from the E46 M3 into the S52, and that is sort of the gem of ultimate driving machines, I would say, from a personal standpoint. But the E36 M3, in my opinion, is truly amazing. And just real quickly touching on the design of those cars, like I said, I never really liked the look until recent times. It's grown on me so well. Clean OEM, relatively unmolested examples of E36 M3s have just grown on me so much. They've aged like fine wine. And once again, just like the E9X, I totally see why this generation of M3 has shot up in value in recent times. Now, based off of process of elimination, you guys can guess what my number 1 platform is in terms of M3 generations and where number 1 comes in on my list, but that is going to be the F8X BMW M3 and M4. For anyone that's new to my channel, I drive an F82 BMW M4, and when I was looking to get into my first M car, I did an unbelievable amount of research. I talked to so many people, I rode and drove so many different M's, and for some reason the F80s I just could not stray away from. Ever since the car came out, I was in love with the design. I think it is the best looking generation of BMW M3. Again, looks are very subjective, but the sharp angles, the lines, the aggressive wide fender flares, the headlights, just everything sort of put together into this overall exterior package. It's just peak BMW M design, in my opinion. There was a lot of controversy as well when the S55 engine came out. You know, it was straying away from naturally aspirated power plants and moving over into forced induction. So we have this 3-liter twin-turbo inline-6 S55 engine. But this power plant is just a monster. The S55 has so much torque down low. It has so much power for a car with only 425 horsepower. And if you look at the technology, the rigidity, the amount of lightweight materials and stuff that I've talked about on my channel, if you watch my previous videos about this car is an engineer's wet dream. And it's very type A. It's not necessarily like type B. If you're looking for like ultimate driving feedback and feel, this isn't going to particularly give it to you. But there's something that is so amazing about the F80. Not only the fact that you can daily drive them, the fact that they're comfortable to drive, but the fact that they also have such stellar performance, and with aftermarket capabilities, or even just a relatively limited set of modifications, you can be insanely fast in these cars. A lot of people say that the driving experience on them is dull, it's very synthetic, but I would beg to differ. After owning this car is an animal to drive. It is hard to tame. If you don't know what you're doing, this car will step out on you. It can break free from you at any point, and it really requires a good driver to hoon the hell out of these things, especially with all the nannies turned off. The dual clutch transmission, the power band of the S55 being so aggressive, the really stiff rear end of this car, and just the overall aggressive nature and looks of the F80 make it my #1 on this list. I freaking love this car, guys. And anybody that's been in tune with my channel for the past year or so has definitely known that about me. But that is going to conclude it and wrap it up for this video today, guys. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with my list, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm prepared for the dislikes. But if you did enjoy the video and if you did enjoy what I had to say, please make sure to smash that thumbs up button, as well as subscribe to the channel if you are new here. I would appreciate that very much so. And please go ahead and throw your own lists in the comment section down below. I'd love to engage with you guys, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say as well. So I know this video ran on for a very long time, but there is a lot to talk about when it comes to a topic that is this controversial. Anyway, I'm rambling on. I will catch you all in the next one. Take it easy, my friends. Bye-bye.